Greetings everyone, this is Music is a Journey. I'm Peter Scove, and today I'm going along with a thread started by the channel Mercyful Metal. Actually, that is a new channel to me. I found out about this thread because of S&T Young's video on this, and so I checked out Mercyful Metal's video and actually watched a few other people's videos as well. The theme is 10 albums where the title track is your favorite track or the best track. Sounded like it might be a little bit difficult, but as I started looking at different albums, I quickly came up with a list of almost 20 and considered a few more. But I've narrowed it down to 10, and taking some of the kind of obvious ones off or some of the ones people already mentioned. Without going into a lot of detail, let me just get onto my list then. So first of all, I want to go way back to 1970. This is the debut album of Lucifer's Friend. There is a song on this album called Lucifer's Friend. The album is called Lucifer's Friend. Kind of reminds you of Black Sabbath, doesn't it? So yes, the most well-known track on this album is Ride the Sky, the opening track, and that's because they have a horn section playing the same part that Robert Plant screams or vocalizes at the beginning of the Immigrant Song, and I'm not sure whose version came first, but that's the one song from this album that gets mentioned the most. There are a lot of other very good tracks on here, but I like the title track Lucifer's Friend because I think it is the darkest and heaviest track on the album. Of course, the lyric is about something sinister. This little man knocking on my window, and the hour struck 1, he had to run, but he'll be back again. And then it's like he says, tonight is the end of your life. John Lawton on vocals here, giving a performance that puts him on the Olympic vocalist stand along with Ian Gillan and David Byron of Uriah Heep, of course. Fantastic long-held screams on here. It is along the same lines of Deep Purple and Uriah Heep, very heavy, hard-hitting guitars, pounding rhythms, galloping, thumping bass going on there, and a very distorted Hammond organ solo in there as well. Very heavy track. Again, 1970 here, so very heavy track, and my favorite one just has the atmosphere of fear and sinister feelings and weird descending notes at times. A really cool track, I think. So next up, also sticking in the 1970s, I picked the title track of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I had considered also Black Sabbath's eponymous song, but I decided to go with this one. There is quite a story behind this song. The whole title concept of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is about being in the band Black Sabbath, because by this time everybody was getting really tired. They had just done some big world tour and returned to the UK to take some time off before they started work on the next album, and they had barely walked in through the doors of their homes when they got a call saying, "You're going to play a festival in California. Get back on the plane and get out to California." And they said, "No, we're not going to do it. We need some time off." But they were told they had to do it. There would be 150,000 fans and get out there and play. So off they went to California, played the show, and apparently each of the band members was paid $1,000 for the event, which I suppose is a lot in a way, 1974, 75, getting paid getting paid $1,000 for performance. But the thing is that Black Sabbath were probably paid a lot more money for that, and where did the money go? So that is around the time that they started thinking there's something fishy going on with their management, and that of course led to the whole Sabotage album with songs like The Writ and Megalomania, as they were trying to separate themselves from their management. However, with this album here, they had a lot of positive feelings for Volume 4, working together in California and getting stoned out of their minds on cocaine, so they thought they'd try to repeat the performance and go back to California. It didn't happen. They just got stoned and dicked around and nothing came together, so they finally retreated back to England again, went into some big countryside manor with a dungeon and axes on the walls and knights in, armor, whatever, ghost stories, and things came together really quickly. In fact, I think the riff for Sabbath Bloody Sabbath was written on the first day after arriving at the manor. So the song is Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, about being in the Black Sabbath band and all the rigmarole that they were being put through. I really like the song. I love the opening riff and I like how it starts, but then when it gets into, there's that melodic section with the clean guitars, it's a very nice touch, and comes back to the heavier riff again. And of course then we get into that really heavy, dark, evil riff part. I like most of Ozzy Osbourne's vocal performance throughout this song, but at the beginning of that heavy riff part, I don't really like that "Where can you run to?" Like that low start and up sounds like he's trying to find the note to hit to get in, and he started too low. But he redeems himself later on, particularly when he sings "Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath." Yeah, I love that part. So yeah, an excellent track. There are some other really cool tracks on here. I always liked Spiral Architect as well, but and Killing Yourself to Live. But I'm gonna go with Sabbath Bloody Sabbath as my favorite one. Okay, I'm just gonna like slightly cover this because I have the original album cover artwork for the Scorpions' Virgin Killer album. Perhaps you know the story about it. Yeah, I don't know. I think that the story is the photographer said, I mean, it was his idea or somebody at the record label thought that that would be a good idea for an album cover. And I think he responded to the complaints about it, saying, well, here in Germany, we love our children and we don't think about them in a sexual way. However, the album cover pose is a little bit on the extreme side, no matter what you are thinking. Now the alternate album cover is a variation of this with all 5 band members coming at you looking very serious and mean. And I don't think, for a title like Virgin Killer, having a bunch of long-haired, tough-looking guys coming at you looking angry, well, okay, so possibly they are defending the assaulted version. I don't know, but anyway, so apparently the idea of the Virgin Killer concept, according to Uli John Roth, was that time is the Virgin Killer. Time steals all innocence. As you grow from child to adult, you lose all that innocence over time. So that's what it was supposed to be. Never minding the cover or the title, the song itself, the title track of this album, I've always really loved it. It's got a great riff, the drum workout in it is fantastic, and just the way the song charges along, has a really cool solo, drops back into the riff again. I've just always loved it. In fact, this is one of my favorite Scorpions albums. I like pretty much every track on here, but I think Virgin Killer for me, is just a slight notch above the others, although Polar Nights is also freaking good. So yeah, another pick then, the title track of the Scorpions album, Virgin Killer. Okay, so I seem to be stuck in the 70s here, but don't worry, we are going to move on. But I had to consider AC/DC. Thought about Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. They had some other ones too. Someone mentioned Razor's Edge, and actually that is a really cool song and surprisingly very dark for an AC/DC song. But I think more recently I've been enjoying Let There Be Rock, and I know this is another really cool album with lots of great stuff on here, but I just think Let There Be Rock is a little bit different from other AC/DC songs. It's of course very fast paced, but it has that whole section where it's just drum and bass and vocals going and no guitar, and then I think there are at least 3 different lead guitar breaks in here, and there's of course also the anecdotal story of Angus Young's amp catching on fire while he was playing the final guitar solo for this song. It's a ripping guitar solo anyway. I don't know if it's true or not that the amp caught on fire, but hey, could be. But yeah, I just think this is a really ripping song, and actually I got this album rather late in life. I was a big AC/DC fan. That was the first band I really loved. I had all the Bon Scott albums except this one because I always mistook it for a live album because of the cover. However, I finally got it maybe about 10 years ago, and yeah, Let There Be Rock is a really ripping song, so that's my pick for that. We're finally going to move on from the 70s, go up into the 1980s, and I present to you the debut album of Virgin Steel with a song on here called Virgin Steel. Now, Virgin Steel are one of the early American power metal type bands coming out of New York in the early 80s. One of the songs on here, Children of the Storm, that is actually a really strong contender contender for best song on the album. There is a story about the band putting their phone number on the album because that was a great way to meet girls. But one day they got a call from some guys out in California who said that they had a band and they really liked the Children of the Storm song. And when asked what their band's name was, they said, well, our band is named Metallica. This goes way back to 1982, by the way. So, but the title track, Virgin Steel, and the band's namesake also, it's really such an epic piece. It has a really cool guitar riff opening it up. Actually, there's an opening with this little kind of mysterious beginning and David DeFay's voice coming in very soft, and then he hits his trademark high notes and the riff comes in and boom, the whole song starts off. We've got electric guitar, we've got these powerful organs which they put in, but overall just a really awesome early American power metal song. Maybe some influence, some similarities to European power metal as well, because of the organ sound, which was not really that common back then in American metal, I think. Ripping solo and then going back into the lead riff again. We also have a brief organ instrumental interlude, but not very long and not really a solo either, so it's really nice. Great song, my favorite one from the album, Virgin Steel. Okay, yeah, I'm going to mention this one next here also. So I don't have Dio's Last in Line album. I used to have it on cassette. What I have here is a compilation of Dio from everything from Elf, Rainbow, Black Sabbath, and Dio, going up to, I think, the late 80s. Anyway, my favorite Dio song of all time is The Last in Line. And I would actually have the album. It's just, most of the songs I really like on it are on this compilation, so I haven't got it yet. But I've always loved The Last in Line. I remember that was actually the second Dio song I ever heard. First one was Rainbow in the Dark. I heard it on the radio at a time when I was listening to Mob Rules, and I thought, oh, Black Sabbath have a new song with keyboards. What the heck is going on? Of course, Black Sabbath had used keyboards in the past, so that wasn't really a surprise, but it was for me. But yeah, so the next one I heard was Last in Line. I remember seeing the video for it. I still think it's a great video. And I just love that clean guitar and melodic beginning, and then that thum, boom, boom, you know, really pounding riff, and you hear the bass very clearly in this song here too. Dio's vocals are fantastic as usual. Great powerful song. Love Vivian Campbell's guitar solo, starting off a little slow and a melodic, picking up some of these pinched notes that I really love to hear in guitar solos, and then going into a shredding moment as the music builds and the snare drum is pounding away, and then boom, there's the release and he hits the high notes, and it's fantastic. So I listened to it again a couple of times here, once this morning and once yesterday. Really such a terrific song, and for me one of the iconic heavy metal songs of the early half of the 80s anyway. So Dio's Last in Line. Let's see here, I should name this one here next. So one of those other big iconic songs for me of the 80s is Lee Aaron's Metal Queen, from her first actual real Lee Aaron album. The other one was the Lee Aaron Project. Excluding that song, the rest of this album is a pretty solid hard rock. Even there's a song in here called Deceiver, which is pretty much a metal song for 1984. It's a pretty solid album, but the title track, Metal Queen, for me is just one of those songs that is just head and shoulders above everything else that she did during the 80s. It is, again, an iconic track of the 80s. It has this really cool, mysterious, low organ building with some rattling chains clinking here and there, and then she comes in with her voice that, you know, wow, that power she has. The riff, it is a straightforward 80s metal song in a way, but it just seems to have everything perfectly in place. The way the drums come in, little things like little fills in the guitar between the between the riff transitions. And then that whole part there where it slows down again and we hear the chains, you know, dropping on the ground, and she's singing very softly at first, this kind of like, oh, like this. And then the music starts to build, the drums come in, and again we get her trademark, you know, yeah, and the guitar solo comes in. A very melodic solo, but very effective, and bringing us back into the main part of the song again, and the chorus, and wrapping it up. Really fun video too. It's so cheesy, but it is, you know, it's cool. So Lee Aaron's Metal Queen is just one of my favorite again, early 80s metal tracks, and I think my favorite of hers of the 1980s. Her more recent releases have been really, really good, even though it's more of what she calls power rock, not really metal. But yeah, metal queen. Another video I watched, some guy, some guy, a cool guy in Germany, he said that Master of Puppets he didn't pick because it's not the best track on the album. And okay, I'm going to say with Master of Puppets, the album, pretty much every track is cool. Some of my favorites are Leper Messiah and The Thing That Should Not Be. Welcome Home Sanitarium, of course. The slower part of the instrumental, Orion, with the bass solo is really cool. And of course, Damage Incorporated. But for me, the composition of the song Master of Puppets is really an accomplishment in 80s thrash metal, because as a fan of heavy metal in the 1980s, I was told, you know, how what I loved was not music. It was just screaming, it was just noise, and there was no melody, there's no musicality. Some people even saying that, you know, the musicians couldn't even play their own instruments. And I thought, well, then whose instruments were they playing? Were they playing rentals? So for me, Master of Puppets is a compositional achievement. We have that opening, exciting opening, boom, bam, 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 and we get into the main riff, go into the song, which is of course a warning song about what drugs can do to mess up your life, basically run you into the grave. And after running through like a nice, great, you know, heavy thrasher, we get into that slower, clean part. And a very beautiful lead guitar with clean guitar going, and then it starts to get a little heavier, and then we get into that heavy section, that bum 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 bum. Gets a little bit growly, a little bit angrier feeling, and then we get into that blazing guitar solo, you know, the real shredding going on. But then after that, it does this neat little almost proggy section with this, and then as that wraps up, it sounds like they could play around with it a little bit more, but they just bring it down and go straight back into the main riff again. And I just love that. Like, they're playing with you a little bit, and then boom, they're right back in on that main riff again, and wrapping up the song with all the laughter and so on. I just think like the way that whole, you know, they could have just done it as a thrasher with a shredding solo and wrapping it up as a thrasher, but they put it into different stages, and each stage is kind of telling something about the feeling of the victim of the drug abuse, the person who's doing it, or the viewpoint of the drug itself. And I really like how they did that. So for me, Master of Puppets is actually my favorite song off the album, although I do love lots of others. So I don't know if this really counts because this is actually an EP, I believe, but Mayhem's Death Crush. This was my introduction to Mayhem. In fact, when I thought, oh, it must have been something 7-8 years ago now, when I thought, let's find out more about this Norwegian black metal scene, because I totally missed it. I jumped off the extreme metal bandwagon somewhere in the late 80s, and so I totally missed out on all of this. So I picked up Burzum, and I picked up Immortal, and I picked up Mayhem. And of course there's that whole weird instrumental at the beginning, I forget what it's called now, but the title track, Death Crush, just has such an awesome riff. I love that guitar riff. And then it's just this insane thrashy type song where the drums almost seem to be playing almost to a different beat of the guitars, because the guitars are just going insane and the drums are like, you know, I don't know. It's so off kilter almost. But then after a bit we pause for a brief moment, and then we get that wonderful riff again, but this time played with a buzzing bass, which just sounds so mean. I always love it when a band will do that. They will drop everybody else out, and just the bass will play the lead riff, and then the band joins in again. So really just mean, nasty riff. I love that. And the rest of the album, I think, is more or less like the main part of the song, but that Death Crush has that riff which just puts it above the rest of the heavy tracks on this album for me. So Mayhem's Death Crush. And finally, I'd like to draw attention to Maximum the Hormone's album Yoshu Fukushu. This is a Japanese band who play everything from reggae to punk to ska to hardcore punk to metalcore to death metal to pretty much anything fast and fun and extreme. And one of the great tracks on here that you should actually watch the video for is a song called Alien. The first half is just an intense workout in extreme music styles, just jumping from one to the next, and it shows the band playing live. There are people going ballistic in the audience, doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and then the band gets like all electric with blue electric sparks coming out of them, and they start popping extra heads and limbs off their body. It's totally awesome. But halfway through, the track just suddenly changes and becomes this really light, melodic, very light, pretty pop punk type piece, which then gets a little bit more fun. It's a great video and a really cool song. But if you understand Maximum the Hormone, it makes sense that they did that. It's not a surprise. If you've never heard them before and you only watch the first part, you're going to be like, whoa, this band is amazing. And then suddenly, what happened? Are we on to another song now? What's going on? But the title track, Yoshu Fukushu, is also a terrific one. I mean, either song is really good, but I think overall Yoshu Fukushu is a little bit more, it's not divided like into two parts. You have Yoshu Fukushu starting off with very clean guitar, very light and sparse, and drummer, now she's singing in that very high, almost girlish, soft voice, and then suddenly, boom, everything just drops in and it gets really freaking heavy. I forgot his name now, but the guitar player with the scary face and the dreadlocks, he does this kind of whispered, fast-paced speaking thing, and then they get back into all the kind of heavy stuff. But then they move into a kind of a cleaner part that almost sounds like a kind of march and a chant type thing, and back to the heavy stuff, and back to the march chant thing, and then wrap it up with the soft, lighter part again. So that song feels more like a journey going through different emotions, and I'm not really sure what it's about, but they keep saying, referring to one of their classes in, I think it's maybe high school, and the front cover, it's actually all these girls sitting at desks writing out probably Yoshu Fukushu in kanji, and it's interesting because the artwork is actually almost the same girl, just with different hairstyle or different glasses. You can actually see by these white shapes here that it's the exact same shape everywhere, except there's a variation where the legs are in a different position. But one of the girls is looking up and she has a skull for a face here, which is pretty cool. And here's the back. And if you're wondering why this looks so freaking big, this CD actually came with a, I can show it to you here, they actually came with a comic book. Which is pretty cool. So, Yoshu Fukushu from Maximum the Hormone, and I think this goes back to 2011. So, I think I will put the link, I will put the link to the video, the YouTube video for that song, because I'm sure a lot of people don't know it. As well, I will put the link to the video of Mercyful Metal's video for this, 10 albums where the title track is your favorite or the best one. And also I'll put for S&T Young, because he's the one who alerted me to this thread. So that does it. Lots of other great stuff that I had lined up, but those 10 are my pick. So thanks everyone for watching, and hey, jump on the thread if you like. See you in another video soon. Bye.